Welcome to Relationships and Astrology, and I'm Margaret Gray in Dublin.
And I'm Armand Diaz in New York.
And today we're talking about the full moon in Gemini, which, depending where you live, is either on the 13th or the 14th of December. So any thoughts, any initial thoughts, Armand, on this full moon in the air sign of Gemini?
Well, full moons are always charged, exciting times. And in Gemini, there's a sort of sociable energy, a mental energy, a little bit of a detached energy, I would say. And there's a lot of, at this particular time, there's a lot of independence because the sun will have just finished a trine to Uranus. So it's a very independent energy right now.
Yes, it's interesting because the full moon I always associated with a lot of feelings and emotions coming up to the surface. But when it's in one of the air signs, I think for anybody who doesn't have their natal moon in air, then it can feel particularly detached. It can feel much harder to really connect with our emotions, connect with our body, connect with the earth realm. And so in terms of relationships, depending where each individual's moon is at, it may be a little difficult to connect on an emotional level, on a kind of sensual level, because it just is so much in the head.
And full moons are times when we see things that have come to light, when we are exposed to what's been under the surface. It sort of comes up for us, and we're aware of it. But in Gemini, it's going to be handled on a very mental level, perhaps more than emotionally. And I think that is. It's not a time when we make a lot of decisions. It's more the time when we see the results of past decisions. And so there's often a sort of frenetic energy about it because we're sort of unconsciously pushed to things. And I think in Gemini, there's a little bit of a kind of, going a few different ways, a little bit of scattered energy.
Yes, it's one of the dual signs, like Pisces. So really there's the light and the shadow side of Gemini. So some of that may come up in relationships, that people may feel like, which direction, what's going on here, what's happening. And also, of course, it's part of the grand trine in air. So there's really a lot of that mental energy, and also it's sextile Uranus. So I think that one of the important things is really how individuals, for individuals' sake, but also within the relationship, to stay very grounded, to kind of keep your feet down on planet Earth in a way. And also because this moon is ruled by Mercury, which is in Capricorn. So that gives maybe a little bit of grounding. And it's a very good time really maybe for communicating, but being very careful and cautious about how one communicates and what one communicates.
And actually, Mercury is getting very close to his retrograde. He's already in the shadow of his retrograde. So yeah, he's ruling, but he's ruling it from a position of starting to slow down. And in Capricorn, we're talking about, yes, careful. Think about the communication. Think about what you want to communicate. Think about how it's going to be received. And listen as well as speak. We're always talking about communication. Like, well, I'll open up and tell you what I'm feeling or thinking. But sometimes the other side of it is to listen as well.
Yes, and maybe a good way to communicate right now might be to put things in writing rather than speaking, because I think then there's always the opportunity to edit things, which is always good with Mercury and Capricorn. And just to remind our listeners that we will be doing a recording, of course, about the Mercury retrograde quite soon. So keep an eye out for that.
Certainly.
So,
well, I also wanted to point out that Venus is in Aquarius. So if the detached air energy of the new moon isn't enough, we have to remember that Venus is in Aquarius, and that is already telling us that it's a good idea to be get a little bit of perspective on relationship.
yeah, so maybe time to kind of step back, look on things, evaluate things, and just see, to kind of step back and see what's happening really in the bigger picture of things. And in terms of the bigger picture, before we leave, just to mention that the Sabian symbol, again, thanks to Linda Hill, for this degree is 3 fledglings in a nest high up in a tree. So I thought that's quite interesting because there's that detached perspective of looking down and maybe not being quite ready to fly yet. So maybe there's something about this full moon, that there's something within relationships that isn't ready quite to fly, but that it gives us an opportunity to kind of detach and look at the bigger perspective.
Wow, that's quite a Sabian symbol. It's very appropriate.
So we will see everybody very soon when we come back for the Mercury retrograde. Thank you. See you soon, Armand. Bye-bye.
See you, Margaret.